The screen door of the sprawling cedar-shingled lake house slammed shut, a sound as integral to a Minnesota summer as the drone of cicadas and the gentle lapping of water against the weathered dock. 10-year-old Anna Carlson didn't look back, her bare feet pounding a familiar, joyful rhythm on the sun-warmed wooden planks that led to the water's edge. Her father, Dr. Evan Carlson, a man whose presence filled every room he entered, was already on the Scalpel, his beloved Chris Craft. He moved with the unhurried, confident grace of a surgeon, coiling a rope with the same precision he applied in the operating room. His smile, when he saw her sprinting towards him, was as wide and bright as the shimmering expanse of Lake Minnetonka itself. "Ready for your navigation lesson, first mate?" he called out, his voice a warm baritone that always made her feel safe. "Ready, Captain," she chirped, her small hands gripping the gunwale as she scrambled aboard, the boat rocking gently in welcome. He smelled of Old Spice and the faint, clean scent of antiseptic that clung to his clothes like a second skin, a reminder of the world of healing he inhabited. For the next hour, he was not Dr. Carlson, the respected physician, but simply her father. He patiently guided her small hands on the throttle and the big wooden wheel, explaining how the wind and the current were invisible rivers, secrets she had to learn to read not with her eyes, but with her hands and her instincts. It was their sacred ritual, a protected space carved out of his demanding life. Later, as the setting sun began to paint the western sky in breathtaking strokes of lavender and rose, her uncle Andrew arrived. Dr. Andrew Thorne, her father's younger cousin and partner at their thriving Wyzetta clinic, was a study in contrast to her father. Where Evan was open and effusive, Andrew was reserved and watchful, his smiles tight, precise things that never seemed to quite reach his cool, calculating eyes. Anna never felt entirely comfortable around him. He had a way of looking at you, as if he were diagnosing a problem. Anna was on the screened-in porch, curled up on the wicker swing, and listening to the crickets tune up for their nightly symphony when their voices drifted from her father's study. They were not the easy, familiar tones of family and partnership. They were low and tense, sharp-edged sounds that felt like shards of glass in the peaceful evening air. "Cannot continue, Andrew. I will not have my name associated with this. It's unethical. It's profoundly dangerous." Her father's voice was firm, but underneath it, Anna could hear a deep, painful disappointment that made her own heart ache. "You're being hopelessly dramatic, Evan." Andrew's reply was a placating hiss, the sound of a snake trying to appear harmless. "I have everything under control. These people are in pain. I'm helping them. It's compassionate care. You're creating a legion of addicts and calling it compassion. The quantities of OxyContin, the cash payments from out-of-state patients who are never even examined. It stops. I have been documenting everything, Andrew. Every forged chart, every illicit prescription. We are meeting on the boat tonight, and you're going to listen. This ends now, one way or another. I will not let you burn down everything we've built." A heavy, suffocating silence followed. Anna felt a chill crawl up her arms despite the humid air. A few minutes later, her father emerged onto the porch, his face etched with a gravity she had never seen before. He knelt before her, taking her small hands as large, warm ones. "I have to go out for a little while, sweetie. Just a very important meeting with Uncle Andrew on the boat. I'll be back before you know it." He hugged her tightly, a fierce, desperate embrace that felt different from his usual hugs. "I love you more than anything in this world. Never, ever forget that." He walked down the long dock where Andrew was waiting, a rigid, impatient silhouette against the deepening twilight. Anna watched the boat's single white stern light glide out onto the dark, glassy water. It shrank until it was just another star in a sea of them, and then it was gone. It was the last time she ever saw him. The official narrative that followed was a masterclass in character assassination, orchestrated by Andrew with the cold precision of a sociopath. He was the picture of grief, the devoted cousin left to pick up the pieces. He tearfully revealed to the family, and then to the authorities, that Evan, his brilliant partner, had been secretly drowning in debt, that he had developed a gambling problem, that he had been drinking heavily becoming unstable and erratic. He produced beautifully forged loan documents from offshore lenders and discovered faked betting slips in Evan's desk. The half-empty bottle of expensive whiskey found on the drifting empty boat seemed to corroborate the story. Tragic accident, the headlines read, or the unspoken, more damning whisper, suicide. For Anna and her mother, the world collapsed. The life insurance policy was nullified by the suicide clause Andrew had so cleverly invoked. The debts he had manufactured were legally binding, and creditors, real and imagined, descended like vultures. Anna was 13 when the eviction notice was nailed to the front door of their lake house. She remembered the shame, hot and acidic, as she watched the contents of her childhood home being loaded into a truck. She remembered the look on her mother's face, a mixture of confusion, grief, and a profound, bone-deep weariness from which she would never recover. They moved to a cramped, dingy rental in a faceless suburb. The whispers at her new school followed her like a shadow. Andrew would visit occasionally, a benevolent tyrant in a cashmere coat, pressing a $100 bill into her mother's hand with a sigh of put-upon generosity. "I'll always look after you too," he would say, his eyes scanning their threadbare apartment with a flicker of what Anna, even then, recognized as satisfaction. He was the concerned relative, the grieving partner, the man who had inherited a multi-million-dollar medical practice and a sterling reputation, all built on the scorched earth of her father's good name. The August sun beat down on Lake Minnetonka in 2013, the light bouncing off the water with a ferocious, blinding brilliance. In a cubicle farm in downtown Minneapolis, 38-year-old Anna Carlson stared at a spreadsheet, the numbers blurring into a meaningless jumble. Her life had become this: a data entry job she hated, an existence pared down to its essentials to afford the rent on her small apartment. But her real work began at night. Her apartment wasn't a home, it was a cold case unit. The walls were lined with corkboards, connected by a spiderweb of red yarn linking photos, documents, and maps. For 2 decades, she had channeled her grief and rage into a singular, all-consuming obsession, proving her father was murdered. A local news alert pinged on her computer screen, the headline detonating a bomb in the silent, 28-year-long war she had been waging. Sunken boat from 1985, discovered by salvage crew near Big Island. Her breath caught, a painful, jagged thing in her throat. The article detailed how a commercial dive team from Superior Salvage, contracted to clear a deep water channel for a new private marina project, had located the wreckage in over 60 feet of water. A 1980s-era Chris craft, its mahogany hull remarkably preserved in the cold, anoxic depths. The registration was pending, but it was linked to a long-forgotten cold case. Anna didn't need the confirmation. It was the Scalpel. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a wild, frantic bird beating against a cage. She grabbed her keys, knocking a stack of files from her desk. Papers scattered across the floor. Forensic analyses of forged signatures, timelines of Andrew's financial windfalls, printouts of land deeds. The architecture of her life's obsession lay at her feet. The drive to the Hennepin County Sheriff's Office was a disorienting journey through a past that was now roaring into the present. She bypassed the front desk, her stride so full of purpose that no one tried to stop her. She found the main detective bullpen and announced to the first person who looked up, "My name is Anna Carlson. The boat you just pulled from Lake Minnetonka belonged to my father. His death was ruled an accident. It was a lie. I have the real case file right here, and I need to speak to whoever is in charge of homicide." Her sheer, unyielding intensity earned her a seat in a sterile, windowless interview room. An hour passed, a deliberate tactic, she suspected, to let her cool down. Finally, the door opened. Detective Mike Larson was a man in his late 40s, his suit rumpled, his face a roadmap of long nights and frustrating cases. He looked tired, but his eyes were sharp, missing nothing. "Ms. Carlson," he began, sliding a thick, worn file onto the metal table. "I'm Detective Larson. I've just read the original 1985 file on your father's disappearance. I understand this is a difficult day, but the findings were quite clear. Your father was under significant financial stress. There were reports of heavy drinking, and he was last seen boating alone at night. A bottle of high-end whiskey was found on the boat. All signs pointed to either a tragic accident or, I'm sorry to say, a suicide. Every single part of that narrative, Anna said, her voice a low, controlled force, was a carefully constructed lie fabricated by one man, my cousin and my father's partner, Dr. Andrew Thorne. She opened the heavy accordion file she had carried with her for more than half her life, its edges soft with wear. You have the official file. I have the truth. She began, not with emotion, but with facts. She walked him through the forensic accounting that proved her father was financially sound in the process of systematically buying his cousin out of their shared practice. She showed him the detailed analysis from a renowned handwriting expert, proving the loan agreements Andrew had discovered were sophisticated forgeries. She laid out the timeline of Andrew's life after 1985, the immediate takeover of the clinic, the rapid expansion, the purchase of the lake house he had once visited as a guest, his ascent into the highest echelons of Minneapolis society. My father wasn't running from debts, she concluded, her voice now trembling with suppressed rage. He had discovered that Andrew was running a massive pill mill out of their clinic. He was going to expose him. My father died for his integrity. Andrew got rich, he got famous, and all it cost him was my father's life and my family's future. The truth of what happened that night is in that boat. I am begging you. Please just look. Larson stared at the meticulous cross-reference files. This wasn't the rambling of a grief-stricken daughter spinning conspiracies. This was a private, 28-year investigation, and it was more thorough than the official one in his hands. Okay, Ms. Carlson, he said, the practiced cynicism in his voice giving way to something else, curiosity. Okay, I'll look. Detective Larson stood under the harsh, humming fluorescent lights of the Hennepin County Evidence Garage. The Scalpel rested in a massive steel cradle, dripping a steady, melancholic rhythm onto the concrete floor. It was a ghost ship, a mahogany-time capsule from a different world. The forensics team, clad in white Tyvek suits, moved around it with a quiet reverence. Find anything that wasn't logged in 85? Larson asked the lead technician, a sharp-eyed woman named Dana. The Glenfiddich bottle is here, Dana confirmed, pointing to an evidence bag. Consistent with the original report. But it's also a brand we know Dr. Thorne favors. We found this, too. She held up another bag. Inside was a small, leather-bound physician's journal, swollen and warped into a brick of sodden paper. It was wedged deep under the captain's seat in a waterproof oilskin pouch, completely hidden from a casual search. And then there's the main event. She led him to the stern. The 85 report just says engine trouble. They assumed it stalled. But look here. She pointed a gloved finger at the main fuel line. It wasn't ruptured, wasn't corroded, wasn't broken. It was sliced clean through with a very sharp blade. This boat didn't stall, Detective. It was deliberately disabled. Larson felt a jolt. He was a damn good sailor. Anna's words echoed in his head. There's more, Dana said, guiding him into the boat's small cabin. The air was thick with the smell of mildew and decay. The original search was cursory. They were looking for a body, not a crime scene. Look at the floorboards here by the main hatch. She aimed a high-intensity ultraviolet light at the wood. Larson could see them clearly, a series of deep, parallel gouges and a dark, almost black stain that had soaked deep into the grain, invisible in normal light. It's heavily degraded, but the preliminary test is positive for blood. The gouges look like someone was dragged, their shoes or maybe even their fingernails scraping the wood. This wasn't an accident, Mike. This was a violent struggle. Larson thought of Anna Carlson and her file, a testament to 2.5 decades of screaming into the void. He took the bag journal. Back in his car, he called the department's records division. I need you to pull the supplemental file on the 85 Carlson drowning. Specifically, look for any witness statements that were dismissed or uncorroborated. 20 minutes later, the archivist called back. Got it, Mike. Only one. A statement from a registered nurse at the Carlson Thorne clinic. Woman named Carol Brandt. She approached investigators a week after the disappearance. Claimed Dr. Carlson was deeply worried about his partner, that he was going to confront him about unethical medicine. The investigating deputy's notes are, well, they're from 1985. He wrote, and I quote, "Witness appears to be an emotional, disgruntled employee. Likely has an unrequited romantic attachment to Dr. Carlson. Her story is not credible. Seems they didn't even file a follow-up report. Find me a last known address for Carol Brandt." Larson ordered, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. Now, he called Anna. When he told her about the fuel line, the blood in the cabin, and the hidden journal, there was a long, choked silence on the other end of the line. "Does the name Carol Brandt mean anything to you?" he asked. Carol, and his voice, when it came, was thick with emotion. "Yes, she was my father's head nurse. She practically ran the clinic for him. She adored him. She was always so kind to me, sneaking me lollipops. She quit without notice a few weeks after he disappeared. Andrew told my mother she'd had a complete nervous breakdown over the tragedy and moved away. She didn't have a breakdown, Miss Carlson. She tried to tell the truth," Larson said, a hard anger in his voice. "And nobody listened. I have an address for her in Duluth. I'm driving up there tomorrow morning. I think you should be there when I talk to her." The drive north on I-35 was a surreal, hopeful pilgrimage. Carol Brandt lived in a small, tidy house with a panoramic view of Lake Superior's vast, steely gray expanse. She was in her late 60s, her hair a cloud of white, her hands gnarled with arthritis, but her eyes were as sharp and clear as the cold northern air. She was guarded at first, the sting of her humiliation in 1985 having calcified into a deep-seated mistrust of authority. But seeing Anna, now a woman with her father's determined eyes, broke through her reserve. "I tried to tell them," she said, her hands trembling around a mug of tea as she sat with them in her sun-filled living room. "I told that arrogant, dismissive deputy that Dr. Carlson was going to expose Andrew, that he was going to save his patients from a man who had stopped being a doctor and started being a dealer." Anna leaned forward, her heart aching for this woman who had carried a piece of the crushing truth for so long. "What exactly was happening, Carol?" "It was a floodgate," Carol said, her gaze distant, fixed on the churning gray water of the lake. By 1985, Andrew had a list of cash-only patients. They'd drive in from Wisconsin, from the Dakotas. No exams, no charts, just a steady stream of prescriptions for high-dosage OxyContin, Valium, Percocet. Evan was a healer. He saw what was happening, and it was destroying him. He set up a separate accounting book, documented every single script, every cash payment. He was building an ironclad case for the state medical board. He kept it all in that little leather journal he carried everywhere. Larson and Anna exchanged a significant look. The night he disappeared, he came to me after the clinic closed. Carol's voice cracked. He looked so tired. He told me he was meeting Andrew on the boat. He was taking the journal. He said, "It's my insurance policy, Carol. It's all in here." He thought he could give Andrew one last chance to come clean, to shut down the operation without destroying the family name. He was such a good, decent man. He wanted to save Andrew from himself, even then. "Why didn't you tell the police all of this?" Larson asked gently. Carol let out a bitter, rattling laugh. "I did. I told them Evan was going to confront Andrew, that he was afraid for his life." The deputy smirked at me. He asked if I was in love with my boss. It was the most humiliating moment of my life. 2 days later, a letter arrived from a high-powered law firm. My position was terminated. Later that week, Andrew himself called me at home. He told me if I ever spoke a word of my delusional fantasies to anyone again, he would make sure my nursing license was revoked and that I would be smeared as an unstable drug addict who was fired for stealing from the clinic. I was a single mother with 2 young children. I was terrified. He scared me into silence. I have lived with that cowardice every single day since. The forensics lab in Minneapolis performed a technological resurrection. Using multispectral imaging, cryptographic software, and painstaking digital reconstruction, they peeled back the layers of time and water damage from Evan Carlson's journal. The recovered passages were a prosecutor's dream. Page after page of Evans' precise, clinical script detailed Andrew's crimes with damning clarity. But it was the last few entries that painted the most vivid picture, a portrait of a man in anguish, watching his life's work being perverted into a criminal enterprise. October 1st, 1985, A wrote 30 new scripts for OxyContin today. All cash, all out of state. I cross-referenced with the appointment book. Not a single one of them had a scheduled visit. This is no longer medicine. October 3rd, 1985, confronted A again. He laughed at me, called me a dinosaur, said this was the new face of pain management, said I was too naive to understand business. My business is healing, not dealing. October 5th, 1985, he's hiding money. Large cash deposits into an account I can't trace. He's building an empire on the misery of others. I have enough now. I'm giving him one last chance to come clean. For our family's sake, I pray he takes it. The news that his cousin's boat had been raised sent a shockwave through Dr. Andrew Thorne's carefully curated world. He saw it on the evening news in his sprawling, glass-walled mansion overlooking Lake Minnetonka, not far from the house he had stolen from Anna's family. The image of the Scalpel being lifted from the water was a nightmare given form. He felt the cold sweat of primal fear. For 28 years, he had been safe, cocooned by wealth, power, and the passage of time. Now, the past was literally being dredged up. When a reporter mentioned an old case file being reopened by HCSO Detective Mike Larson, Andrew's composure finally snapped. He went to his state-of-the-art home office, a room that cost more than Anna's entire apartment, and made a call. An hour later, a private float plane was being readied for him at a secluded airport. No flight plan, cash payment. Larson got the tip from an FAA contact. He's running. Anna, he said, his voice grim over the phone. A float plane, heading northwest toward the Canadian border. Or he's not running away, Anna said, her mind working furiously, piecing together the puzzle she knew better than anyone. He's running to a loose end. My father had copies of everything. He was meticulous. Andrew is a monster, but he's not stupid. He wouldn't have destroyed all the original patient files and financial records he used for his scheme. He would have hidden them. Insurance, just like my father's journal. It was a brilliant, intuitive leap. Larson got a fast-track warrant for Andrew's mansion. While his team bagged the contents of a still-warm shredder, Larson scanned the bookshelf in Andrew's office. Behind a row of leather-bound medical texts, he found a hidden safe. Inside were financial ledgers that mirrored the entries in Evans' journal and an envelope containing the deed to a remote, off-the-grid cabin on a lake in the Superior National Forest, deep in the Boundary Waters. A state patrol helicopter was scrambled. Larson insisted Anna come with him. As they flew over the endless, breathtaking tapestry of forest and water, Anna felt a strange sense of vertigo. This was it, the culmination of a marathon she had been running her entire life. Using the GPS coordinates from the deed, the pilot found the lake. And on its shore, a sleek, modern cabin with a yellow float plane bobbing at the end of a dock. As the helicopter descended, the powerful downdraft scattered the embers of a bonfire. Andrew Thorne stood beside it, frantically feeding the contents of several cardboard boxes into the flames. He looked up at the sound of the chopper, his face, usually so composed, now a mask of primal fury and disbelief. By the time they landed and a team of state troopers secured him, the last of the files were turning to black ash. "You're too late," Andrew screamed over the whine of the helicopter's rotors, a wild, cornered look in his eyes. "You have nothing. A waterlogged book? The word of a disgraced, senile nurse? It's my word against the ghosts." He was defiant, arrogant, even in handcuffs. "We don't need those files, Andrew," Larson said, his voice cutting through the noise like a scalpel. He held up a plastic bag sheet of paper from the lab. "We restored the last page of Evans' journal, the entry he made right before he got on the boat with you." He handed a copy to Andrew. Anna watched as her cousin read the words. His face, which had been contorted with rage, seemed to collapse inward, the color draining from it, leaving a waxy, gray pallor. The final entry was written in a hurried, shaky hand. Met Andrew at the dock. He was agitated, pale, denied everything, but his eyes told a different story. I showed him the journal. He didn't speak. He just looked out at the water, at the last light draining from the sky. I told him we had to go for a ride, to talk this out away from everyone. He agreed. He seems broken. I think I can still save him. I have to try. He went on that boat to save you. Anna's voice was barely a whisper, but it carried the force of a tidal wave. She stepped forward, her gaze locking with his, a lifetime of pain and anger focused into a single point. He loved you. He was your family. He saw you were drowning in your own greed, and he tried to pull you out. And you held his head under the water instead. He wouldn't listen. The words erupted from Andrew, a torrent of self-justification that had been dammed up for 28 years. He was going to ruin me. Everything I'd built. For what? A few pathetic junkies? He was a saint, a purist. He couldn't see the real world. We argued on the boat. He tried to grab the wheel to turn us back to the marina. I shoved him just to get him away from me. He fell backward. He hit his head on the brass cleat. He was sobbing now, the carefully constructed facade of Dr. Andrew Thorne dissolving into the pathetic reality of a weak, frightened murderer. He wasn't dead. He was just dazed, but I saw the look in his eyes when he came to. It was pity. He was never going to let it go. I panicked. The water, it was so cold and dark. I held him under. It felt like an eternity. He fought, but he was hurt. I held my own cousin under the water until he went limp. He looked up at Anna, his eyes pleading, hollow. Don't you see? I had to sink his body in the deepest channel, cut the fuel line. The debts, the stories about his gambling. I had to destroy him. I had to make sure no one would ever listen if a story like his ever surfaced. The helicopter ride back to Minneapolis was cloaked in a heavy silence. Below them, the setting sun bled across the 10,000 lakes. Justice, Anna realized, didn't feel like the triumphant victory she had imagined. It felt like an immense, cavernous sorrow. The trial was a media circus. The full scope of Andrew's criminal enterprise was laid bare. Following his confession, dive teams recovered Dr. Anna Carlson's remains. He was finally laid to rest beside his wife, who had passed away 10 years prior, broken by the weight of the lies. Months later, on a crisp autumn afternoon, Anna stood on the shore of Lake Minnetonka, not far from where her childhood home once stood. She had quit her job. With a portion of the assets seized from Andrew, she had started a small foundation to provide pro bono investigative services for families of cold case victims. The war was over. Her father's name was etched in stone, cleared and honored. But more importantly, her own name was now hers to define. She took a deep breath of the cool, clean air. For the first time since she was 10 years old, her life was not a quest. It was a blank page, and for the first time, she was ready to write it.